questions from the audience. So we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Liz Swanson, and I am the Vice President of Seniors and Alumni Relations in Tippie Senate.
Yeah, and my name's Nicholas Current, and I'm the president of Tippie Senate. So to start off, we just wanted to let everyone know that we've enabled live transcription for this meeting in order to better serve our hearing impaired participants. If you're seeing the transcription down in the bottom and you would prefer not to see it, just click on the transcription button and then select hide subtitles. If you'd like to increase the size of the transcription, you can do so by clicking the transcription button and selecting settings. This will give you a pop-up screen where you can adjust the size of the transcription.
On behalf of Tippie Senate, Tippie Alumni Relations, and the Young Alumni Board, we are so excited to present today's Lunch and Learn event. So before we get started with today's panel, I would love to go over a few housekeeping items. You can submit your questions to us through the chat to either Nick or I, or into the general chat. And just type a question, hit send, and then we'll try and get to as many of those as possible. And we did receive quite a few questions in advance, so thank you very much for those, and we'll do our best to get to as many questions as we can.
Yeah, so now to get it all started, it is my absolute pleasure to announce today's panelists. So Sydney and Jenna, if you real quick want to say what you studied here at Tippie, your path out of Tippie to where you are today, where you are now, and a fun fact. And then Sydney, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Alexander, and I graduated from Iowa in 2018 with degrees in management on the entrepreneurial track and also theater arts within the, College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. So after graduating, I spent almost 3 years at Volkswagen Group of America at their North American headquarters in the DC area. So I spent 2 years there in a rotational program where I rotated between product, research, and their marketing departments. And then post-rotational program, I stayed on the marketing team for another year. But about a month ago, I started a new role in the DC area at Choice Hotels International, which is the second largest global hotel chain. So I am still in the DC area, and I work at their global HQ as a senior analyst for consumer insights and analytics.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jenna, if you'd like to go.
Yes, thanks very much for having me today. My name is Jenna Hurt. I graduated in 2013 from Tippie with degrees in finance and economics. And after that, I went to work in local government in economic development for the city of Waukee, Iowa, which is the suburb of Des Moines, a really fast growing suburb, in fact. And so great first job, good experiences. Excited to share more about that with you today, but also learned through that experience that I didn't really want to work in government, or especially local government. And so started exploring other options and talked over a lot with my mentors, decided to go back and get my MBA specializing in risk management and insurance. I've also, during that time, I worked as a TA for the University of Wisconsin, and I also did an internship at AIG, which is a major insurance company. And now I manage the corporate risk and insurance program for Kearney, which is a global management consulting firm with 60 offices in 40 countries. So it's really pretty fascinating work. Fun fact about me, as you could tell a little bit, perhaps through my job experience, I've moved around the Midwest. I've been Iowa City, Des Moines, Madison, Minneapolis, and now I'm in Chicago. So if you're job searching in those markets, then I might have some thoughts for you. And I'm always happy to chat with you about that.
Thank you, Sydney and Jenna, for sharing about yourselves. Now to transition about our topic of discussion today, we would love to hear for our graduating seniors about the meaning behind a first job. I feel like there is just so much pressure built up in our time here at Tippie that goes towards trying to find the very best job right out of graduation, and that can be really challenging, especially with COVID hitting last March and derailing a lot of internships and future job plans. Since you two both have more experience outside of Papa John business building, could you share what you have found about the meaning of a first job?
Yeah, sure. So to me, the meaning of your first job is just getting that great training. If anything, as Jenna already said, your first job is helpful because you might find it's what you want to do, but it's also helpful in understanding if it's something you don't want to do. And I think being in Tippie and just going to college in general, education is so important because it teaches you how to learn. And that's exactly what you'll be doing in your first job. It's definitely drinking from the fire hose and just learning a ton of information about your industry, your company, or your role when you start. So I think it's really just about being ready to hit the ground running, and volunteering to help with everything you can to expand your learning and your experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Sydney on all of those points. When I think about what does it mean to get a first job, I hope I could offer you just a little bit of perspective. Like, you want to have the right amount of pressure on yourself and on the experience, and that means not too little, like, oh, whatever happens, it doesn't matter. Which I know you all are here today, so you're not thinking that. I know that, but then you also don't want to put so much pressure on the first job and the first experience that it just feels like you're making one giant life decision. Of course, it's a step forward, but also you got to take a risk. And if it's if it turns out to be something that you didn't like, you can make another decision in 6 months or a year or 2 years. Really, in the grand scheme of things, like, that is not a lot of time to have to live with a decision that doesn't work out. And so I just say that to say, of course, you want to be diligent, do your research, understand what you're getting yourself into, and think a little bit about, think about the first job as a building block or a first step to the next role. But don't act like it's the end all be all of everything that you'll ever do either. So yeah, I think that's pretty much summarizes meaning of the first job, in addition to what Sydney said about it's an opportunity to just learn what it's like to be in the working world. You sort of learn what you like, what you don't like. You learn about how to evaluate the culture of a company and what that really means. It's kind of hard to tell as a student sometimes, but when you're in it, you do have an opportunity to identify, like, these are the things that are important to me in a job and in a company, and these are, maybe secondary. So yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up.
Awesome. So thank you so much for sharing your opening wisdom with us. We will now open up the discussion to questions. We've got a couple, but feel free to send some in the chat. So the first one we've got was, we know you both touched on this a little bit already, but what was your first job after graduating from Tippie? But more about how and when did you find it?
Yeah, that's a good one. I can jump in and take that one first, because I have kind of a unique story, and I sort of preface this with, like, do as I say and not as I did, kind of in some respects. One is that I didn't do an internship while I was in undergrad, like between my junior and senior year, and so that made it pretty hard to get that first role out of college. And in fact, I did have some full-time offers that were in, like, financial advising, but ultimately decided, like, that wasn't the fit for me. And so what I ended up doing was sort of, like, bet it all on this one internship and sort of hoped that that a full-time role would develop out of that. And I say it was a risk because I moved, and I had a young daughter at the time. She's older now, but I moved myself and my daughter from Iowa City to Des Moines to take an internship for $15 an hour, no health benefits, and so it was sort of like, I was really putting a lot on the line, I guess. But it did work out. It developed into a full-time job. And yeah, so I think I shared with you that it was a job in economic development. I don't want to stray from the question too much, Nick. Were you just asking, what it was and how did I find it? Yeah, probably like many of you, I was like scouring job boards, and we didn't have Handshake at that time. We had something else, but the Career Center website, things like that. So that's how I found my first job. I would say the jobs after that I found definitely through networking, and I did find like that's a much more effective way to job search. So yeah, I'm happy to talk more about that, but I'll just leave it there for now.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I started out at Volkswagen Group of America. So I grew up in Detroit. So I've always loved cars. Cars have always been a big part of my family culture and a hobby and an interest of mine. So I thought it'd be really cool to work for a car company. At the same time, I was really interested in rotational programs because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So I thought having that opportunity to rotate through different teams would be really cool. So I literally just started Googling every car company I could think of with rotational program after it. And I ultimately found the Volkswagen rotational program. So I think I had applied for that in like October of my senior year. And then after, going through multiple rounds, I ended up finding out late in February, which is really nerve-wracking when you have a lot of friends in like accounting or finance that have already figured out their whole plan. But be patient and just kind of do your due diligence to find things that interest you or that you think might be a good fit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So the next question is, what were some of the ways that your first job lived up to the expectations you had while still in college?
That's tough. So for one, just getting great training. As I mentioned, I got to try a bunch of different things at work and work on different projects every day, which was something that I was really looking forward to in a rotational program. And, it helped me get the visibility I was looking for in such a large organization. Something that exceeded my expectations were the friends that I was able to make at work. I moved to DC not knowing anybody. So kind of having that built-in group of friends that were also going through the rotational program, and then, meeting people through friend of a friend. Those are some of my best friends to this day in DC. So I think those two were the biggest for me.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I agree with Sydney. It's such a tough one. In fact, the further away you get, I guess it would have been about like 8 years ago for me. Now it's sort of hard to remember what my expectations were in college. And, I think at that time I was so naive. I don't know if I had a lot of expectations for what I would learn or what the job would be like. I think it's easier to recall the ways that it was different than what I expected. So I was thinking, like, I know that's probably your next question, but I'll just go there anyway. I think I imagined taking a job in like an economics related job that I would be doing a lot of like reporting, and that I would learn some more like sophisticated analysis and maybe use some new technologies that I wasn't familiar with. And none of that was really true. I actually found that it was a lot more almost like my company or my boss, they didn't really know. They had this like one project that they hired an intern to do. And then once that was done, it was sort of like, okay, now what are we going to do with this person? And then thankfully, eventually it was like, okay, we want to keep her around. Like, can we figure out a role? And so I think in some ways it was great that I didn't have particular expectations going in, because it made me feel, a little more flexible to accept what was available.
Yeah, and I can just add on to that if we're going to things that didn't quite live up to your expectations. I think one that was hard for me is realizing how much I had to be an advocate for myself. So, the rotational program I was going into had kind of, promised a certain level of advocacy that didn't necessarily hit the mark, which ended up being a really valuable experience because it made me more confident and able to be that advocate for myself. So, you don't have the amazing advisors that you do at Tippie to guide you through everything, which can be really hard to come to terms with. So I had to find mentors for myself that aligned with the career path I was looking for, or, had similar values to me. And then also, advocating for yourself when it comes to compensation, which can be really difficult the first few times you have to do it. So when I was leaving the rotational program, I had to, fight for what I thought I deserved in this market, in this industry. But again, I think it ended up being a very valuable experience and really helped me grow professionally.
So next we'll start answering some of our questions in the chat. The first one was from Zara, and they asked, did you have to juggle multiple job offers, and how did you navigate either accepting or declining them? And if there is a specific example, did you have a timeline on those choices?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. So like I said, having so many friends in accounting and finance in the fall, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. This is so bad. So I started interviewing for places that I wasn't super thrilled about, just from what I studied and what I wanted to do. And I got an offer and ended up declining it. Because I realized that wasn't necessarily the path I wanted to go down. It was sales, and just me personally, that is not who I am. So I was really lucky because I had a bunch of final rounds of interviews that were in February of my senior year that were for roles that more closely aligned with what I was looking to do. It's definitely difficult to navigate the timeline of those. I've found that, if you need a few extra days, the worst they can tell you is no, but it's always worth asking. They'd much rather give you a few extra days than, have you accept and then have you go back on that. So I think that's really important, and just kind of, weighing your options when you start thinking about things that are really important to you. Is it location? Is it the career path? Is it the industry? Is it the compensation? And just start weighing those options against each other. And I know it sounds cliche, but you'll know in your gut what you should do, and you really should just kind of follow that intuition.
Yeah, by comparison, I feel like Sydney just has such a great handle on things. Like, listen to her. She is just kicking ass. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I did.
Jenna, you're the best.
So yeah, I'll give you really quickly just like the fresh out of undergrad, sort of embarrassing, naive version, and then I'll give you a more concrete out of MBA version. So right out of undergrad, I actually got hired somewhere without really realizing that I had gotten hired. So what happened was they had sort of this like series of interviews. It was a financial advising type role, kind of salesy, and that's actually how the interview was too, like as if they were selling it to me. And so, interview 1, behavioral, interview 2, like here's what your compensation could look like as a financial advisor. I think I think I was thinking it was interview 3, but then, you know, I sort of got there and they were like, okay, this form and you'll get your business cards. And I was like, wait, what? So yeah, so that didn't go as well. As sort of like, I hadn't decided to work here yet, and it was really awkward. And then I had another similar like financial advising offer while I was awaiting my offer for like the job that I eventually took. And that was kind of awkward too, because they were applying some pressure and I just didn't know how to handle it. So on that, I definitely would lean on Sydney's advice, like ask for a few more days, don't give an unrealistic expectation and then try to like dodge their calls or anything like that. Yeah, and it can feel, especially when you're a student not very used to those types of communications, it can sort of feel like they're like pressuring you, but it's just their job. It's not personal. They're just trying to wrap up, you know, their own interview and business processes and things like that. So that's that version. And then thankfully I developed some of those communication skills over the next few years, and coming out of MBA, I had 2 offers that were very comparable. And I agree with Sydney on this point of like, you know, you kind of know in your gut. I would say like, again, similar to my example about applying the right amount of pressure on yourself, like give yourself the right amount of time, like not so much time that you have to make an impulsive decision, but not, so little time, but also not so much time that you're causing yourself to stress and overthink about it. Just, you know, seek some advice from your mentors, sleep on it, and then make the decision and be okay with it. And know, you know, if I make this decision and I hate it, like it's fine. I'll deal with it at that time. I have confidence in myself that I can get another offer. I already got 2 at least, right? So yeah, so it can be tricky to navigate those situations, but definitely lean on your mentors, your advisors, the Young Alumni Board. We just have had this experience not too long ago. So if you're weighing a couple of offers, that's an excellent time to ask for their input and feedback.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. So next up, we're going back to the list of questions, but what were some of the unforeseen challenges of moving from Iowa City to your new location? Like, what were some of those growing pains that you felt in that transition?
Yeah, I could start with that one. One of the challenges or growing pains was definitely like settling into a new community and being around a different set of people. And I sort of had that experience as you all have, like before when you go to college for the first time. For me, it was like moving from rural Iowa to Iowa City, which felt, you know, big by comparison. And then moving to Des Moines, which felt a little bit bigger, and also, just being around different age groups, different demographics, like socioeconomic demographics. And then I lived in the suburbs. So I sort of felt like the place that I chose to live was, I wish I had chosen a place that was more like connected, more walkable, and more, there are other people my age around me so that I could build a sense of community for myself. I think that was probably one of the greatest challenges moving from Iowa City and moving from a college environment to a suburb in my case.
Yeah, I think the big one for me was cost. You know, at first, when you get this, you know, your offer letter and you find out what the salary is, and then you start looking at apartments, it almost feels like monopoly money. You're like, this isn't even like, I don't have a sense of what this actually means or looks like. So I think that was a big one to get used to. And also I didn't know anybody when I moved to DC. So again, I made a lot of friends at work, but also I joined the Capital Area Iowa Club, which has really cool events and happy hours. And, you know, not now, but used to have game watches at 2 Iowa bars. I never thought there would be Iowa bars in DC, but there are. And so that was a great way to meet fellow Hawkeyes, even if they graduated a long time ago or were still in school and, we're just exploring DC. That was a really fun way to find a community that I didn't think I would find here.
Yeah, so sort of a follow-up into that one from Rachel in the chat was, how did you make friends outside of work? Like you talked about it a little bit, Sydney, but how else did you really just make friends in these new cities?
Okay, I can start with that one. Yeah, honestly, I don't know that I ever really got there in Des Moines area. I definitely met mentors, which helped a lot. And then I got involved in like the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute. So I was through that. I mean, unfortunately, that was like toward the tail end of when I was getting ready to leave. But if I reflect on it right out of college, I think I wish I would have gotten more involved earlier in like a young professional group and just be a person that just consistently goes and stays involved. Sometimes you'll go to those when you're brand new to the city and then it's not a lot of fun because you don't know that many people and maybe it doesn't feel super organized like in college where you just have that regular like cadence of people that you're always going to have seniors that are there that kind of know what they're doing in terms of student orgs and stuff like that. So just like keep consistently going to those things until you find your group of people. And then I think the second thing I would say is just be brave and set up a happy hour or whatever, do it yourself. Like it doesn't have to take hours and hours of planning and organizing. Just like I did this just last month, getting together a group of my women friends from MBA, just sent them out a message and said, hey, I'm thinking about getting a small group together for happy hour. Let's do this Thursday at 7:30. Whoever can come, that's great. Just do that. Just do it a few times and it will feel okay. It feels like awkward and scary at first, but it will help you a lot.
Yeah, one other thing I would just add to that as I was thinking about this as Jenna was talking, something else I did too was think of like a cause that was important to me, and then I got involved with that. So my dad had type 1 diabetes, and so that was something that's always been very near and dear to my heart, but I'd never been seriously involved in it. So I got involved with the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation's Young Professionals Committee. And so, the whole point is to work together to raise money to go towards funding for research for type 1 diabetes. But that was really fun because, we would have happy hours, or we would do like workout classes or things like that. So I think when you find a cause, you're automatically going to get passionate people that will not stop until they reach a certain goal. And so that automatically makes them very open and engaging, and they will embrace you even if you are a newcomer, because you're adding to this important cause. So if you can find something you're passionate about and find like-minded people, I think that's a great way too.
Awesome, thank you so much.
So our next two questions have to deal with, Sydney, as you referred to, monopoly money. The first salary is always just very different. So we have two questions. The first one is, how do you adjust or create a personal budget for your first real paycheck? And the second question from Elizabeth in the chat, how do you approach the salary question or negotiate a salary?
Oh, these are tough. So starting off with the budget, you also have to think about when you move, you're going to have a lot of expenses associated with that, and security deposits and parking and things that you never really thought about. So I was pretty strict on myself for the first 6 weeks or so in terms of budget, just making sure I had enough to cover my expenses. And then as the paychecks continued to flow in, I got a better idea of how much I could save and how much I could spend every month or so. So just kind of making sure you have enough at first, and then you can kind of adjust from there. And in terms of navigating salaries and negotiating, that is so hard. I remember being in college and like thinking I was going to have a panic attack for asking somebody for a couple $1,000s more, but it was important to me, and so it was important that I do that. And so I think if you're able to do some research on what similar organizations or similar roles are giving in the area you're going to be working in, that is huge leverage. Also, you can leverage offers against each other. You can say, hey, I really want to come work for your company, and this much money is separating me from going with you guys or going with this other offer I received. And again, the worst they can say is no. It's not like they're going to rescind your offer. So it's always worth asking. And also, if you even just kind of role play those situations with your friends or your parents or your mentors, that can be really helpful too. Just like getting the words out of your mouth, making sure you're being confident in what you're saying, but also making sure, you're getting your point across and you're doing it in a professional way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I think just briefly on the point of budgeting, hopefully you're already doing that, honestly. My daughter is, she's going to be 13 this year. She's learning how to use Excel and practice budgeting. She's saving for a trip to go to DC. It's like, she's not like doing some hardcore analysis over here or anything, but she's learning how to plug in numbers or whatever, and you all can do that. So like, dude, just practice it. It's a good way to keep up your Excel skills anyway.
Jenna, that's amazing.
That
is
yeah,
so impressive.
I don't know if she thinks so, but it's an important skill. You all know that. I know it. So so definitely, start doing that now, even if it feels like I don't even have any money to budget, just to start doing it. And then, to Sydney's point, like, be aware of the moving expenses. Try not to borrow too much to do that. Just try to pretend like you're still a broke college student for a while. And then once the paychecks start coming in and you're feeling a little more stable, really try to train yourself to live on like 10 to 20% less than what you're making, because having that, cushion will afford you a lot more freedom to switch jobs, or like if something comes up that's out of your control. So on the budgeting point, that's a really important piece. On salary negotiation, I agree 100% with Sydney. I felt like my heart was just like pounding out of my chest to even think about asking for more. And listen, I was getting an internship right out of college. So I'm like asking from like $12 to $15 an hour. It's not a big jump, especially for, from their point of view, but it felt big to me and it was an important step. So to Cindy's point, practice that. Really, you have not practiced negotiation until you've practiced it out loud and your voice sounds confident, even if like on the inside you're shaking. So definitely like don't discount that. And then lastly, to echo Sydney's point on research, I know it can be a little hard to research salaries. Actually, I just saw a great post on Ask a Manager, which is a blog yesterday, where they collected like thousands of data points. So I sent it over to my Women in Business mentee, and it's great. Google it, you'll find it. That's one way, but I would advise like try to find, several data points that show you the low, the medium, and the high. So that way you have a sense of like what the range is, and you're not just going off of like one salary point that somebody told you. So that's sort of I think that's my advice on salaries and budgeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next question we have is another sort of a double question. So how long did you expect to stay at your first job? And then how long did you actually end up staying? But also, how long do new employees stay in their first position before leaving or moving up to a new position?
Yeah, Sydney, do you want to start with this one maybe?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, I was in a 2-year rotational program. So that kind of had, set time to it. But I really thought I would stay at VW much longer than I ended up staying. But my current opportunity, it actually came up on LinkedIn, and it was, a great opportunity to diversify my experience a little bit. So I decided to move on. But when it comes to how long people stay in their roles, that can really vary by company or even department. So VW didn't really have too much of a promotion structure, to be honest. It was just kind of like applied to whatever roles are open. But at Choice Hotels, it's a lot more transparent of a promotion structure. I think it's also important to know that if you are in a role and you feel like you should be promoted, but you might want to take on a different experience or try something else out, lateral moves are really important too. You might figure out that that's actually what you like to do, and you like to do that better than your previous role. And that you've really diversified your experience in that way, but you also might have a much clearer path if you take lateral moves as well. So I think it really depends and can vary within each company. Some people have been in their roles for like 20 years, and some people are in their roles like under a year. So it can really change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, again, this is probably a good point for me to give you sort of the right out of undergrad me and what I'm thinking now, when I think about my career path now. Yeah, I think maybe I expected to stay in my job about 5 years, but to Sydney's point about like monopoly money, like the time, it feels kind of nebulous. Like, I don't know, I didn't know at that time, like what's it feel like to work in a job for 5 years, So I would say probably at the like 18-month mark, I started feeling like, okay, I'm ready to move up or move out of here, and it was really a matter of communicating that. Maybe, now as I reflect, I would have like, if I had the skills today that I had then, maybe I would have communicated it differently. But I did sort of express that, I was like looking for new projects and interested to take on new responsibilities and things like that. And so sort of signaling without really saying directly, like, hey, I want to move forward toward a promotion. So yeah, I would say probably the 18-month to 2-year mark, sometimes 1 year, it just depends on the company, to Sydney's point. Sometimes 1 year is a natural time to start thinking about promotion. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. How I think about it now, I'm about 2 years into this role. I am hoping to get a promotion within the next year. And I'm sort of thinking like it as, what skills do I want to have between the time that I started my job and the time to the next role? So I actually don't want to get into a management role before I'm ready. And, you have to be careful not to like tell yourself you're not ready when you are, like you're almost there. But all of that to say, it's sort of being able to look at what is that next role in your company's structure, what are the regular job duties and the expectations, and how, not just like, you don't have to have demonstrated 100% of those, but you have to have some confidence that you're ready to make that step and kind of land at the bottom of the learning curve on those skills. In order to do that, you have to have some pretty solid experience with the skills that are necessary in your current role too. So in terms of timeline, and way to think about it, that's the approach I would take.
That transitions us perfectly into our next question. So if you could share just maybe a few more tips about being promoted within the company that you're working in a timely manner, just like you said, Jenna.
Yeah, sure. Again, another very tough question. You all are thinking about it the right way, because asking these hard questions and ask them not only of us, but like keep asking of your mentors, of your peers, other people that you meet. Yeah, how to get promoted in a timely manner. I think number one, to Sydney's point earlier about maybe not always having this within your company that you might be used to in college, like nobody's going to really tell you, like, here's how you get to from point A to point B. You have to really work, ask questions, talk to people to understand, what do I need to do in order to, if I want to get promoted a year from now, what do I need to do to make that happen? So that's number one. And then number two is telling people that you want to be promoted. And that means, you know, for me right now, it's like doing a bit of internal networking with others outside of my team. I work in the legal department right now, but I've been meeting with people in finance and HR and IT and all that. And every time I talk to them, I use that as an opportunity to say, here's some cool projects that I have in mind for the summer, you know, and I'll keep you posted on how it goes. I'm hoping to, you know, move up to manager next year. Or I ask them, you know, what, in your opinion, what do you think I should be focused on in order to move up to manager next year? So that's sort of the internal network. And then the other, you know, 2B of that, I guess, is making sure that your boss knows, you know, and saying it very directly. I kind of alluded earlier, like maybe I didn't do that in my first role, but this role I have, you know, I've asked him, you know, what does my pathway to promotion look like at this company? I'd really like to understand that. And if he needs to think about it for a little while and then we circle back on it in a couple weeks or a month or whatever, at least he's got it in his brain, like, okay, Jenna wants to get promoted at this company. So that's my advice in terms of getting promoted in a timely manner.
Yeah, such good points in being direct. It's so hard, but it's absolutely crucial. I think another one, you know, kind of to Jenna's point of, you know, that internal versus that external network is just making sure you're getting as much visibility as you can. So, you know, volunteering to be involved with different projects or working cross-functionally is a great way for people to understand that you are competent and you are excited about this company, and that you could handle many different tasks and move up. And also just asking your manager when you know, kind of settle in within the first month or so, what you can have ownership over, what projects, topics, tasks, so then people within your organization can understand that you're the subject matter expert on something. So I think those are great ways to kind of make sure that you're being seen and you're being noticed, but primarily, to Jenna's point, just being very direct.
Yeah, I would add one additional point on that, especially for the women, but this is true for everyone. You have to grow comfortable promoting yourself. I know it's such a hard thing. I was actually talking with the women in business last night and shared, you know, one reliable strategy for me is I think about, what would I want from my best friend? And I say, of course, I want her to ask for that promotion. Of course, I want her to take care of herself. I want her to get the experiences at work that she wants to have and solve complex problems that are exciting. And you can look around and you can say, you see so many awesome people all around you, and just sort of think like, what would I want for them, or what would they do? Do that for yourself. Like, make sure you're doing that for yourself, even if it doesn't always feel that way inside.
I'm literally over here writing down like Jenna quotes right now. This is like inspiring.
Oh, it's mutual.
All right. So our next question is sort of along the same lines. So how do you go about looking and networking for a new job or company while still working at your company?
I can start off with that one. So like I mentioned, I moved companies about a month ago, and the opportunity came up on LinkedIn. So I think we can all underestimate the power of LinkedIn sometimes. So something that I always have on is my little open to work, just visible to recruiters. If anything, it's a great way to network through LinkedIn and learn about different companies and learn about different roles. And I also always have an updated version of my resume on LinkedIn as well. So that way, if a recruiter comes across my profile, it's easy for them to, get a quick snapshot if I might be the right person for this role. So I think that was the biggest way for me. And then again, just having those mentors that you can run things by, because they're further along in their career, they're able to offer so much advice, but also, they might be able to put you into contact with different people as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think the number one thing I would say is find the style of networking that works well for you. I know there are some, like Sydney mentioned her job through LinkedIn. Actually, Young Alumni Board published a LinkedIn guide, which is available on the Tippie website if you'd like some advice on going that route. And another Young Alumni Board member that comes to mind, Jonathan Coates, he's an excellent LinkedIn networker, and he's happy to share advice about that. In fact, there might be sort of like a vignette in that guide. For me, there are kind of two styles of networking that have worked really well for me. One is adopting mentors and just relying on, I have like a handful of 5 or 6 mentors who I just keep in regular contact with, and I sort of ask them questions like, okay, I'm getting ready to do this project at work, and here are the things that I'm thinking through. What has worked for you? What have you seen other risk managers do? Or, things like that, to just sort of continue the conversation. It's not always a conversation about me transitioning from one job to the next, or interviewing or reviewing my resume or whatever. It's also about, while I'm in the role that I'm in, what knowledge can I gain from them? So that's sort of one style. And then through those conversations, when you are ready to transition, it's more natural to say, okay, I'm thinking about the next steps in my career. I've done these projects that you're familiar with. What next roles do you think, what should I be thinking about? What companies, in my industry, it's like, should I work at a brokerage? Should I work on the client side as a risk manager? Should I work for an insurance carrier or whatever, so maybe there are some specific things to your industry to ask as well. And then in addition to that, I sort of take a really similar approach with networking, just even with peers. It's that one-on-one connection that is really, it just works better for me. And so usually what I do, if I meet somebody cool at an event, or, I actually just talked with a young woman earlier today who I met through an industry association, and I just emailed her right after and said, it was really nice to meet you at this event. I'd love to learn more about you. Do you want to connect for 30 minutes next week? And that's all it is. I'm just learning about her. She's learning about me, but we work in the same industry. And so by getting to know one another, we sort of are top of mind to each other when opportunities arise, or, when I decide to move to a more active job search, then I can go back to those contacts and say, now I'm thinking about moving on. And so if you hear of any opportunities, please send them my way.
So our final question today is about company culture. And it's sometimes very hard to find a company that fits in best with you and your idea of what a company culture should look like. So first of all, how important is company culture to the job that you're working in? And then how do you find a company that matches a culture that you would fit into?
Good question. Another tough one. I don't really think I realized how crucial company culture was when I was in college. But it is, absolutely necessary to have a strong culture that you feel you personally align with. I think a lot of, like, just in my recent job search, I found this, that you can find out a lot about a company culture during the interview process. Like when they give you that time to ask about, any questions that you might have, you can really find out a lot just by asking every person you interview with throughout every step of the process, because depending on the person and the day, that's going to change, but you're going to be able to figure out kind of a picture of what this company culture looks like to you. So I definitely wasn't asking those questions when I was interviewing for my job post grad, but I found out how absolutely necessary it is to do that. And I know it sounds cheesy, but go on the website, look up the company, see what their values and their mission is and some of their goals, and see if those excite you or if you feel that they align to your personal values and goals. And I think that's really helpful, because no matter how great your team might be, if you're within a company culture that you feel like you don't personally fit into, it's really tough to get out of that or to move around internally.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In addition to the point about values, actually, I'll say one point. I agree with Sydney about like looking at the website. One thing that I sort of think of now, I don't know that I was thinking it at the time, is when I look at a company's website, I want to see some diversity. I want to see women in their leadership positions. I want to see people of color represented in leadership positions, or some indication that that's an important goal that they're working on. It's just one of my core values, I think, and we all sort of have those core values that like this is kind of a deal breaker. If the company is not moving in this direction, like I'm not getting a job in 1950. So yeah, on the point about values, I think that's a really important consideration. It can be a little tough, especially when you're right out of college, to know what company culture looks like and feels like. So the other couple of points I would offer you is like, think about yourself and how you like to work as a student. Do you want to work in a competitive environment or a collaborative environment? Do you want to work with people who are really, kind of type A and super organized, or a little bit more laid back? Do you want something that's really structured or a little more entrepreneurial? So just, those are some of the questions that are like, there's no judgment on either of those. It's just a matter of like what fits best for you and your working style. And then again, I mean, this is probably third time I've said in this conversation, just know that if you get there and you don't like it, like you can make another decision for sure. And you'll have more information at that time about what kind of company culture really works for you.
Thank you guys so much for sharing today. I will actually pass it off next to Ashley Durham.
Hi, everybody. I'm the Director of Alumni Relations at the Tippie College of Business, and I just wanted to jump in quickly and thank you all for joining us today for the Lunch and Learn with our Young Alumni Board members. And I also wanted to take a moment to thank Sydney and Jenna for sharing their words of wisdom and expertise with us today. I mean, I was even taking some notes, and I've been working longer than all of you. So I just really wanted to say thank you to them. And I also was putting some links in the chat while they were talking. So I hope you had some time to review those. I know there were some questions about finding that community after college, especially if you're going to a new place. And I just really wanted to advocate for the Iowa clubs that Sydney mentioned. Those are a great resource wherever you might go. That is just a group of Hawkeyes who love coming together, meeting other Hawkeyes, getting them engaged. There's ways to participate outside of game watches, as Sydney mentioned. And we also have virtual book clubs here through the Tippie College of Business. And I hope that you, if you're graduating, are going to spend some time on our alumni page, because there's lots of ways virtually that we want to make sure that you feel connected to not only your home here in Iowa City, but connected to your Hawkeye community wherever you go. So there's some great resources in the chat, and I encourage you to kind of explore those. And then also just wanted to reiterate that our Young Alumni Board members are such a great resource, and all of their emails are available on our website, and they are all more than willing to ask and or answer any questions you might have. So if you see a young alumni board member who's in an area that you think you might want to explore, or like Jenna was saying, just touch base with for 30 minutes to learn more about what they're doing, they are more than willing to be a resource to you. So I hope you take advantage of the opportunity. And I will just turn it back over to Liz and Nick for our moderators, and just thank you all. And I hope you continue to participate in the rest of our Almost Alumni Week activities. So thanks, guys. Go Hawks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ashley. So I just want to re-emphasize and thank you both again so much for being here today, both Jenna and Sydney. Also, thank you to the students who have been here and attended this event. And congratulations to all the seniors. Yeah, good luck.
And then
Yeah, thanks so
also,
much for having me, guys.
Since this is a lunch and learn style event, we thought it would be very appropriate to give everyone $10 Grubhub gift certificates. So those will be showing up in your email inboxes. We have taken down who all was in attendance today. So keep an eye on your inbox for those. They'll be headed your way soon.
Awesome.
Thank you,
And,
everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.